Before we start, take a moment to like and subscribe. You've heard the tale of the fiery monk who defied an empire, sparking a revolution with a hammer and a nail. The year is 1517, and a lone figure, Martin Luther, posts a list of 95 grievances on a church door, challenging the powerful Catholic Church. This act is seen as a heroic stand for faith and freedom. But what if the story takes a darker, more twisted path than you could ever imagine? What if the same man who inspired a movement for freedom also revealed a shocking capacity for betrayal, prejudice, and political compromise? His life was a complex tapestry of revolutionary thought and deeply disturbing actions, a story that forces us to question the nature of heroism itself. The very forces that made him a titan of history were the same ones that drove him to a shocking brutality. That history often glosses over. After his defiant stand, Luther's ideas, particularly his teaching on the priesthood of all believers, spread like wildfire. Not just among theologians, but among the common people. They heard his call for spiritual liberation and believed his teachings meant they too deserved spiritual, personal, and social freedom from their oppressors. The Bible, now translated into German, became a weapon in their hands as they saw a new, divinely sanctioned authority for their grievances. For the first time, people could read for themselves that God had created all people equal, and that the princes and bishops who ruled them were not a part of a divine order, but simply a part of the secular world. This radical message of spiritual equality was reinterpreted by the peasants as a call for a social revolution. The peasants, who had for centuries been crushed under the burden of feudalism, saw their long-held hopes for a more just society reflected in Luther's words. They believed his attack on the spiritual authority of the Catholic Church was a direct attack on all unjust authority, including their secular lords. They were not just fighting for a new religion, they were fighting for basic human rights, for the ability to live and work in dignity. The air was filled with a sense of hopeful possibility, a belief that a new age of justice was dawning, and that Luther was the figurehead of their cause. The peasants' demands, laid out in the 12 Articles, were a testament to this, calling for surprisingly moderate rights, like the ability to elect their own pastors and an end to feudal burdens. For a brief, terrifying moment for the aristocracy, it seemed as though Luther's religious revolution would become a social one, threatening to upend the entire social order. But in a stunning reversal, Luther, who feared social chaos and instability more than he valued the peasants' freedom, turned on them. He shocked his followers by issuing the brutal pamphlet against the murderous, thieving hordes of peasants. In it, he called for the princes to smite, slay, and stab the rebellious peasants, stating that a prince can spill blood better than other people. This vicious turn led to the slaughter of an estimated 100,000 peasants, a dark shadow cast by the man who was once seen as their liberator. Luther viewed their revolt not as a quest for justice, but as a rejection of God-given authority, a grave theological sin that threatened to unravel the very fabric of society. He saw the secular rulers as God's instruments for maintaining order, and he saw it as his sacred duty to support them, no matter the cost in human lives. This act not only alienated his most fervent followers, but also solidified his dependence on the very prince who would protect and propagate his new church. In his later life, a more venomous side of Luther emerged, directed at those who had not converted to Christianity. As he grew older and his health declined, his writings became increasingly coarse and filled with rage. His frustration and rage built into a venomous, all-out attack on the Jewish community. The most infamous of these is his 1543 treatise, On the Jews and Their Lies. The shocking twist lies in the path to his hatred. In his earlier work, That Jesus Christ Was Born a Jew, written in 1523, he had expressed a surprising degree of kindness toward Jews, believing that when the corruptions of the Catholic Church were swept away, they would surely convert to his purer faith. This early optimism, however, was quickly replaced by bitter disappointment, when his efforts to convert Jews were met with little success. His theological worldview, which saw the Jews as having rejected the Christian Messiah, began to merge with his growing personal animosity. When this did not happen, his frustration transformed into a deeply hateful and violent tirade. This wasn't a theological disagreement. It turned into a really hateful and raging outburst. In it, Luther called Jews a base, whoring people and described them as a plague, pestilence, and sheer misfortune. The surprising revelation here is not just his hate-filled rhetoric, but his explicit call for action. He urged the German princes to burn down synagogues and schools, destroy their houses, confiscate their prayer books and money, and even drive them out of the country, advocating for them to be forced into labor if they refused to convert. This chilling document is considered a foundational text of German anti-Semitism and was later used by the Nazis to justify their horrific actions. They republished it and celebrated Luther as a hero of their cause. In fact, a copy of the book was found in the Nazi propaganda exhibit, The Eternal Jew at Nuremberg. The text provided a historical and religious pretext for the unthinkable crimes of the 20th century. The vitriol of his late writings remains a profound stain on his legacy, demonstrating the destructive power of religious intolerance and personal bitterness when wielded by a figure of immense influence. Beyond violence and bigotry, there was a quiet, almost cynical compromise that showed a different kind of bad doing. Luther made a striking exception for Philip of Hesse, a powerful German prince. Philip, married and with a large family, wanted to marry another woman. This was more than a personal affair. Philip's political and military support was absolutely crucial for the survival of the Reformation. He was the head of the Schmalkaldic League, which is a vital military alliance, Protestant princes and cities designed to protect the new movement from the Catholic forces of the Holy Roman Emperor Charles V. To lose Philip's allegiance would have been a devastating blow, potentially spelling the end of the Reformation. To avoid a political scandal and losing the support of this key figure, Luther gave Philip his secret approval for a bigamous marriage, a stark contradiction of his own religious and moral principles. This was a private act, done behind closed doors, with a condition that the marriage remained a secret. Luther and his close colleague, Philip Melanchthon, found themselves in a terrible moral dilemma. Torn between their theological convictions and the harsh political realities, they advised Philip that it was better to commit a private synthobigamous marriage than a public one, which would have been to openly divorce and remarry. Their rationale was that a public scandal could completely unravel the political alliance. That was the only real protection for the new Protestant Church. The two reformers grappled with the moral weight of their decision, a decision made in secret that they believed was necessary for the greater good of their cause. They were pragmatic enough to know that a dead movement was a useless one. But of course, the secret got out. The public revelation of this moral compromise deeply damaged Luther's credibility and revealed that, for all his talk of pure faith, he was willing to make an uncomfortable deal to protect the political future of the Reformation. The scandal was a public relations nightmare that left the Reformation vulnerable to attacks from its enemies. It was an act of profound hypocrisy that showed the line between faith and pragmatism could be a very thin one, undermining the very moral authority he had built his movement on. It was a moment that revealed the human cost of a religious revolution and the moral compromises its leaders were willing to make to see it survive.